Welcome to another episode of Walk with Elias. I am your host, Elias J. Williams, two L's, and it's been a while. I haven't had any content, so I haven't had a chance to speak with you all in quite some time. And yet, here along comes the 2020 presidential debate, and it was a debacle. It was atrocious. If you are a fan of either of the two candidates, I don't think you learned anything last night. There was a lot of over talking, a lot of arguing, a lot of nonsense spewed that I don't think went anywhere. However, there are a number of things to unpack, and we're going to start with the one getting the biggest news right now, which is Trump refusing to denounce racist organizations and telling and referring to another organization also known as the Good Old Boys or the Good Boys to stand by and stand back. It's all the rage right now. We're going to talk about that one. Also, Biden had a bit of a slip up. Did you notice it? Because it actually says more to me about Biden than Trump failing to denounce racist organizations. But again, we'll talk about that. And finally, the racial sensitivity training. It wasn't on my radar at first, but I had someone bring it to my attention that feels as though it's something that is positive for people and that Trump wanting to place a ban on it actually sets things back. We're going to talk about it. So, as we look to discuss these topics, I ask, take a walk with me. All right. Stand by and stand back. First topic up. Hi, Mom. I love you. She was the first to comment on my Facebook post with this comment. And, you know, I am a perceptive person. While everybody else wants to discuss the obvious, the 90% that you know is just something easy to attach to, I pay attention to the 10% that nobody wants to discuss, that gets swept under the rug. It would have been political suicide for Trump to denounce his support base. Okay? Politics is a game. You have to play within the game. Trump refusing to denounce racist organizations is no different than Biden not saying anything or not disagreeing with anything far left. If you paid attention to the debate, you noticed that Trump tried to actually catch Biden in these situations by saying, "Oh, you do agree with that? You know you just lost the left. You just lost the left." There was an inherent game being played that must be played. And so for Trump to have done that it would have been suicide. If your intentions is to win, and I'd like to think that both candidates want to win, you would avoid stepping on landmines. If you had a company that paid your money and you were asked a question that could potentially take them aback, how would you handle it? You would probably step over that. And that's what Trump did. And so him not denouncing racism and Biden not overstepping or saying things that will push away the left cancel each other out. That's a political game. I'm not actually worried about him saying that. It's so blatant. It's like, I get it. You've got to keep your fan base. Okay? However, Biden's slip up was interesting. If you paid attention to that debate, at one point, Biden called Trump a racist. That was a personal shot. Previous topic, it's political jargon. You got to play the politics game. That was a very personal shot from Biden. But what I know about psychology is that a person will never say anything to you in the moment that doesn't reflect on them. In other words, to me, Biden projected and revealed he's a racist. Think about that. To give you another example, when Trump tried to call Biden out for not being smart, he was actually revealing his own insecurities. But that's neither here nor there. Back to Biden. I'd rather deal with a racist, an in-my-face racist, carrying the flag racist, that I know how to deal with, than one who pretends to not be a racist or can't admit he's a racist. The biggest threat to your existence is not the threat that you can see coming. I can see Trump and his supporters from a mile away. They aren't the biggest threat. The biggest threat to your existence is the one that you can't see coming. The threat that you don't even know is actually a threat. The threat that disguises itself as a friend. Have you ever seen the movie 300? Leonidas and his crew had a plan for Xerxes. They would have defeated Xerxes. Xerxes was the obvious threat. They can see him coming from a mile away. They had a plan. Their undoing happened to be Ephialtes, whom they could not see in the correct light versus the tyrant they easily saw. Their undoing was the threat from within, from the individual who they did not know was not their friend. They could not stop him from betraying them. And that is what led to their ultimate demise, not Xerxes. Be aware of the threat that pretends it's not a threat, not the one that clearly tells you he's a threat. Finally, the racial sensitivity training. And I get it. In theory, it makes a lot of sense. You make white people aware that they benefit from racism. However, think about this, and I think this logic applies very well. How often does telling a person that's mad calm down work? How many times have you been pissed off about something and someone told you calm down? Did you calm down? No. Out of every 10 people you tell that to, maybe 3 actually have it within them to calm down. Most people are going to respond negatively to that. Racial sensitivity training fits kind of that scenario. If you're telling a person that doesn't believe or believes that they're justified in feeling a certain way, that they shouldn't feel that way, it's going to breed more animosity. You telling a person that, hey, you benefit from racism, and that person doesn't feel like they benefit from racism, is it going to make them any less racist? It's actually going to make them more defiant, increasing the hostility. Some will repent, but the truth is it's going to breed more animosity. Besides, racial sensitivity deals with individual people. Individual people aren't the problem. Systematic racism is the problem. It's the systematic racism that supports the racist people, that tells them they are doing good by being racist. That's the problem. The United States doesn't have any more blatant racists than any other places in the world. Racism exists everywhere. The difference between the United States and other places is that we have a system in place that rewards racism. They have benefits for being racist. In other countries, they don't have that. So they go about their merry racist way, but they're not doing anything to gain rewards from it. So the problem isn't fixing the people by acknowledging that racism exists. It's great that you do it, but it doesn't solve the real problem, which is the system. It's very similar to the argument of holding police accountable, bad apple police accountable. That sounds great. But the truth is not that the bad apples are the biggest problem. The system that supports the bad apples, or for what the bad apples do, that makes them feel like what they're doing is right, is the bigger problem. What are you doing to address that? That is the prime problem. So I don't have an issue with Trump banning that because, again, while in theory it works, just like telling someone calm down, you think would work. but more often than not, it doesn't, and it's counterproductive. Thank you for listening to Walk with Elias. And here today, I love you today. I'll be here tomorrow. Peace.
When has he ever said a negative thing about a white supremacist? Have you heard him say anything? I haven't.
I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke.
When you say the party is self-destructing, what do you see as the biggest problem with the Reform Party right now?
Well, you've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem. I mean, this is not exactly the people you want in your party.
So are you prepared right now to make a clear and unequivocal statement renouncing the support of all white supremacists?
Of course I am. Of course I am.
How many times do I have to reject? I've rejected David Duke. I've rejected the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan.
About the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans.
In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy.